Fellow Ghanaians, a very good evening to all of you, and thank you very much for joining us here on Upfront on the Joy News channel. And as always, on Upfront, we discuss issues that matter to you. But even before we get into the main issue of discussion for this evening, let me just say that today in Parliament, the minority has been raising some questions about the decision by the Finance Ministry to release some 25 million Ghana cedis to the National Cathedral. So they want to release, they've asked for the release of 25 million Ghana cedis to help in the construction of the National Cathedral. And the minority is questioning why government would want to do this at this moment, particularly when we're saying these are not the best times for the Ghanaian economy. And so we'd expect everybody to be patient with government as government tries to bring back the economy to life. As already known, the president said they knew how to bring back the economy, but did not know how to bring back lives. But is this the right time to bring back, this whole National Cathedral issue? We'll get into all that. That's something that, members of the minority in Parliament are talking about. But also today, Fix the Country has been apologizing. They say the decision to request that they have private security protecting them, armed, and having guns registered according to the law, was a stand to draw public attention to police brutalities. But in the midst of how the public perceived it, they are sorry and are prepared to further engage Ghanaians. As the saying goes, Diotra sainim se nechi achia. So for them, they thought, well, let's do it this way. But with all the criticism from Ghanaians, they believe it's the time for them to say sorry and continue the engagement with Ghanaians. But also this evening, Kumasi Asante Kotoko, having drawn with Ashanti Gold or Ash Gold, have been declared champions of the 2022-2023 Ghana Premier League. And so for all of you fans of Kumasi Asante Kotoko, congratulations to the African team of the 20th century for winning the Ghana Premier League for the 2021-2022 season. So last month, the will of the late Chief Executive of the Forestry Commission, Kojo Owusu-Efriye, popularly known as Sir John, became topical as you debated the properties in the will. In fact, apart from you questioning the acquisition of land in the Achimota Forest, you also raised concerns about the houses, bank accounts, companies, and cars that he owned. Now, your questions were because most of these properties were acquired between 2017 and 2020. Now, while the Lands and Natural Resources Minister made it very clear that he would not benefit from any of the land in the Achimota Forest and the Ramsar site, the special prosecutor, we are reliably informed, has decided to freeze the assets of Sir John. So now let's just look at a few things. The special prosecutor has decided to freeze the assets. Of course, as part of his functions, he can do so. But as he does so, we ask a few questions. What does this mean in the fight against corruption? Now that the special prosecutor has decided to freeze the assets of Sir John, what does it mean in the fight against corruption? Does this also show the commitment of the special prosecutor to the fight against corruption? And this evening we'll be finding out from our guests whether this convinces them that finally we can minimize corruption in the country. But even as we shower praises on the special prosecutor, let's pause for a moment and find out whether the special prosecutor is well resourced to succeed in the fight against corruption. Now, 9 months into office, there's still no governing board. And the governing board has a major role to play, because according to the Special Prosecutor Act 2017, Act 959, the board is expected to give one, first of all, the direction in which the special prosecutor shall go. And so, without the establishment of the board, what does this communicate? One, about authorities' willingness to support the fight against corruption. My name is Winston Amwa, and thank you very much for joining us on Upfront on the Joy News channel. And this evening, we've been joined via Zoom by Adam Senanu, who is the co-chair of the Citizen Movement Against Corruption. Mary Ada is also programs manager of the Ghana Integrity Initiative. And they join us to have this all-important conversation. Good evening, Adam, and good evening, Mary, and thanks very much for joining us.
Good evening, Winston, and thank you for having us.
Good evening, Winston, and thank you for having us.
Great. So, I mean, last month when the will of Sir John, was shared on social media, eventually we saw, everything about it. Many of us complained about it. Many of you complained. The Lands and Natural Resources Minister took the first step in, outlining the plans they had, indicated that Sir John would not benefit from lands in the Achimota Forest and the Ramsar site. Now today, we're told the special prosecutor has frozen assets of Sir John. Let me start off with you, Adam, what you make of the decision by the special prosecutor to freeze these assets pending investigations.
Well, I think it's a commendable step, preventive, such that what we are saying is that we want to test that all the properties being spoken about, captured in this document, the will, are things that have been legitimately earned and acquired, and therefore, until such time that we have finished the investigations and are sure, let no one claim, as there have been additional claims that we are aware of, that they have a right to take in possession and, as it were, beginning to use such property. So I think it's a very good step. It helps all of us have comfort that there will be the checks, and after the checks are done, whatever is legitimate will be given back to those who own it, and therefore legitimate owners of whatever it is they have.
What is the source of your comfort? When you say it gives you the comfort, what's the source of the comfort you have that at least things will be done right?
The source of that comfort is the fact that the special prosecutor has the mandate to freeze such items, and therefore anybody who attempts to try and take anything at this point will be doing so illegitimately and can be prosecuted. It's also because, in the context of the former chief executive of the Public Procurement Authority, who could not justify large sums of money in his account, and yet he eventually went back to court and got those monies. It just beats one's imagination that somebody should go away with monies, obviously, that were not his, that belong to the people of this country. So it's good to know that there's a preventive step. It's good to know that the special prosecutor is keeping his eyes open and alert, and will be acting in a way that will ensure that this country does not begin to lose properties or any other thing that belongs to the good people of the country.
Okay, let me get to Mary at this point and take your initial reaction to this. Okay, so Mary, if you could unmute your microphone so we can hear you, we'll be very glad. I'm told you've muted your microphone.
Thank you so much for having us. And we believe that a special prosecutor, in taking this initiative, is doing so in the right direction. His mandate as SP gives him the power to do what he is doing. And what we would want to add is the fact that this time around, because we know in the past it's been done, and so this time around, let's see how he manages to keep the assets frozen during the period of the investigation. Because we know that in another instance that's passed, we had assets that were frozen, but they didn't get frozen, or they were not kept frozen till the time when everything was sorted out. And so this is in the right direction. Let us see, even though we may say he acquired a lot of property, perhaps not being in contention. But then we cannot know which ones were in contention and which are not. And so it's for the office to then determine after the investigation whether some of these properties that have been acquired are in contention, they were acquired illegally, they were acquired because of some issues around corruption. And mind you, we are talking about a lot of properties, about 10 houses and the rest, which were acquired within a very short period. And so it's for the onus now lies with a special prosecutor to determine if these were if these are unexplained or they were illegally acquired. And it is only for the investigation to determine so. But then when we leave the assets for him to carry on, even though he's not alive, people have gotten the will, and so maybe they would use this item. So it is in the right direction that this is happening.
Now, let me stay with you, Mary, and find out what this action means to you in the fight against corruption.
I believe that we have, as a society, we believe that the processes and the various mandates that have been given to the state institutions to perform should be done. And this is one in the right direction. So it's good. We should not start applauding too much because it's just assets being frozen. We are not even sure if these assets have not been disposed of already, as we know from the past. So we are cautiously optimistic that things are going well, and we hope that they will continue to go well. And it will only inure to the benefit of the fight against corruption, because we have said in the past that things have been very slow when it comes to fighting corruption. Investigations have not benefited us because we do not see any gains. And so if we see that the special prosecutor is putting in place measures to ensure that all he is doing is according to law and as by his law stipulated, then it's exciting for us that he is doing so. We are cautiously optimistic that the fight against corruption will take shape. But we would also want to then say or caution that as he is taking these steps, we should, the states and the executive particularly, should allow him to do his work, because that is the essence of the establishment of the office anyway. We shouldn't have any unseen hands behind the scenes dragging this process. We should allow him to do his work as he has done in the other two instances, so that we would see some action being.
The next leg of our conversation will deal with the unseen hands that you talk about, and the non-interference in the performance of his duties, because we know that the governing board, 9 months into office, has not been formed yet. We will get into that issue shortly. But when you say we should be cautiously optimistic, you've made reference to the two other cases. So this is a special prosecutor who, this year has charged a nominee for the MCE of Drabbing, who openly went out, deciding to collect monies that he said he paid to delegates who were expected to vote for him. We have also seen him charge the former PPA CEO, Abia J. Doesn't that in itself give you the assurance that this is a special prosecutor who's willing to deliver on the mandate given him?
Yes, we have had interactions with him. And on the part of the SP, we have no doubt whatsoever that he is ready to do his work. And so when I say we should be cautiously optimistic, I say so on the basis that these investigations would sometimes take time. And even in the two instances I mentioned, you realize that one is just gone to court. These processes also take a very long time sometimes to deal with. So in our cautious optimism, it is not in not trusting the SP. we trust him and we support him to continue to do what he is doing. But then we know that these processes can be winding, these processes can be long excessively. And sometimes, as I have indicated, the processes can also be frustrating, per people, frustrating them. But for us, we see a special prosecutor who is willing, like in the case of the former one, who is willing. But in this case, we see that he is moving to back his rhetoric with some action. And in the case of the MCE, we are particularly excited because the issues around bribery in elections was becoming just too much. And I suspect, I was mentioning to somebody close to him that if they have been able to get this gentleman, then it means that we need to do this on a whole scale, because the perception out there is that in all the assemblies in this country, this happens. So if out of 260 something, it's happening and we get just one, we shouldn't be celebrating too much. It is good, yes, but we shouldn't be celebrating too much. Let us give him time. Let us see how things pan out, because on a daily basis, something new comes up. Let's see how he handles them. And then we will all begin to celebrate and say, yes, the law is working. The gentleman who is committed is also taking action. The court processes that are ongoing are also being expedited and dealt with as quickly as possible. To engender trust, therein we would begin to say, yes, or most certainly, the fight against corruption is making some significant strides.
Great. When you make the point, I mean, just a bit of a clarification here, because when you make the point that, you know, in this case, he is backing his rhetoric with action, sounds like a bit of a comparison between the current special prosecutor and the previous special prosecutor. Are you suggesting that this special prosecutor is doing more than the previous special prosecutor did?
Winston, I'm not suggesting that at all, most definitely. But in this case, I am saying that for this special prosecutor, in the case of the old special prosecutor, he also took some cases to court. I remember the Mama Yariga ambulance one, he went to court. But in his case, in the case of Kisie Jabin, we all see that he has done some work very quickly and come out to state emphatically that this deserves to be taken action on, and I am proceeding to do so. And so you see, the feedback for me is what I am speaking to, but not comparing Honorable Alamisi and Kisie Jabin. No, they are two different individuals, even though they are doing the same work.
Great. Bring Adam Sananu at this point. I'll get back to you, Mary. Adam joins us again via Zoom. I'm told earlier that he had one or two issues. But Adam, what does this mean? I mean, what we are seeing the special prosecutor do, what does it mean for a fight against corruption?
I think it's a very good sign. And obviously it tells you that the office must always go along with an individual who is that minded, has a mindset that these are issues that can either contribute negatively to the public good or can, as it were, undermine our progress as a nation. To the extent that we are not necessarily having to call his attention to issues before he says, this is a matter that I think is crucial and I'm going to take it up and deal with it. I think it's a very good sign. I think my major concern would be, does he have enough resources, the human resources, to do all the investigation in a timely manner so we can get conclusions sooner than later? Does he have his board fully set up now? That's another key part if he wants to be able to get things moving. You know, is a board in place? Is he able to get additional human resources? Does he have all the financial wherewithal to be able to ensure that these things are done? Otherwise, I think Mr. Kisie Jabin is off to a good start.
And talking about off to a good start, what does that tell you about his commitment in the fight against corruption?
Clearly, the gentleman is committed. You don't take on board a personality like Sir John, even in his death, given his popularity and all the people who have some association. Mind you, the companies listed will have directors, there are individuals who have to be called to answer questions, and many of these may have some political party affiliation. So you need to be clear in your mind that you want to go down that road in order to even start it. And I think it's a very positive sign that you have someone who is not intimidated or daunted by the facts available, knowing full well that you're going to have to deal with some people who have some partisan political backgrounds. And that's positive for us.
And while that is positive for you, one of the things I also want to find out is that based on how he started, do you get the feeling that he's the one who would help minimize the level of corruption in this country?
No. It cannot be a Kesi Ajabeng and a special prosecutor alone. At the moment, I'm in the Upper West region doing some work with local government officials, and we have many issues. It's going to really take, I think that we've got to look inward. A lot of what we are seeing at the national level is a reflection of what we've gotten wrong in our families and in our schools. I think that the value set that people need to have, said that honesty, integrity, and hard work thrive. We are losing it, and we need to go back to those basics and see how we encourage people to stand for what is right. And so you even cringe when you hear some of these issues. So it will take more than Mr. Kesi Ajabeng. All of us have to be part of trying to ensure that our values and what we stand for, we don't just do a lot of talk and don't walk the talk. Otherwise, Mr. Kesi Ajabeng by itself will not deliver the goods of making this country minimize corruption.
Now, while we all have a role to play, Adam, I think we also do agree that you need somebody who is independent to make corruption something that nobody would want to engage in. In the past, we had raised the point that the Attorney General was unable to prosecute his or her own, and so we needed someone who would prosecute people to serve as a deterrent, and by serving as a deterrent, some persons who would have wanted to engage in these corrupt practices would definitely stay away from it, isn't it? And once they stay away from it, we're gradually beginning to minimize the levels of corruption, aren't we?
I agree with you. I think that line of thinking is factual. And we need not just one Kesi Ajabeng, we need many more. If the other institutions of state, the Trages, the Economic Crime Office, and what have you, the EOCOs, will all begin to walk the talk, do investigations, prosecute, and set those standards, we'll get a lot of results. Having said that, there are ways in which a government of the day can ensure that they clamp down on the level of achievement. And so media, civil society, all of us need to be paying attention to whether he's resourced enough, because you see, he can start well, but if they make it difficult for you to take the next steps because you don't have enough funds, you don't have XYZ, he can have 5 cases and even 1 case is difficult to deliver on. So, yes, it's good to have a strong man, strong leadership with strong institutions to deliver, but we also need to ensure that we are guarding the gates and ensuring that what he needs to deliver, and not just him, but many others, is also being provided.
Let me find out from Mary what she makes of this, and then we'll come to how resourced the special prosecutor is. You've raised the point. Is he well-resourced? Because the issue of the board has come up, and we'll talk about that also shortly. But Mary, you've seen these things happening. You've seen 2 cases already. You've seen him taking steps in the case of the assets of Sir John. Do you foresee a situation where, if continued, this could lead to a time when we begin to see a minimization of corruption in this country?
Certainly, but as Adam has indicated, the fight against corruption is a huge tax that one person or one institution cannot, and I must emphasize, cannot win alone. It is a fact that with the various contributions he makes, most certainly it would engender the trust of the people that fighting corruption is doable and achievable, that we can pick on anybody, as you have indicated. Picking on somebody like Sir John is not an easy task. And if he is ready to do so, then it means that the courage and commitment for which he has taken up that office to be an independent-minded person and to prosecute the agenda of fighting corruption is going to be good. And the people of Ghana would judge him, or posterity would judge him for his efforts. But then, as the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan that was put together by Shraj proposes, fighting corruption is for everybody, from the executive to the least of us. And so it assigns roles to each and every one of us to ensure that we are doing something in our own corner to promote the agenda of fighting corruption. So he is doing the part of investigations and prosecution. That is fantastic. We also need to do prevention, because if we prevent corruption, then we do not have to even fight it after all. So let's see how, as Adam has indicated, at the various levels, we put in place the various structures to ensure that it doesn't even happen at all. And the NACAP espouses this. Then we need, as individuals, to also ensure that we are reporting, because he would just be there if we do not report instances of wrongdoing, malfeasance, and all those things. Then he would not have much to do. He would have to go out there to look for issues. But then with us all supporting, we would be able to make that gain. And you realize that there are certain institutions of state as well who are mentioned in this fight. The FIC is one, the audit service is another, Shraj is the main one per the constitution to fight corruption. And so we need to find a way that all these institutions who are supposed to be fighting corruption collaborate very well to ensure that we make significant gains in the fight against corruption. But as I mentioned earlier, this is instructive. This is something we haven't seen before because of the nuances of our constitution. And now that we know that this man is out there to investigate corruption and corruption-related offenses, to put in place measures to ensure that he is also confiscating the proceeds of corruption and ensuring that he puts in some preventive measures as well. I think it's a good step. In the next 2 years, we should be able to say that, oh, this gentleman is prosecuting 10 cases. It's never happened before. And so let's all applaud him. But as I said, let's tread cautiously for now and support him. Media should support him by bringing up the issues. And then civil society should also be out there doing a lot of education to get people to report more instances of wrong behavior. And therein, we would make gains. We need to bring back that trust, because the trust of the people is down. And we do not believe that fighting corruption is one that can be won. But I continue to say that the fight against corruption is like fighting diseases and pandemics. You never get away from them. If today is malaria, tomorrow is something else. Let's continue to tackle them. And as we tackle them, we can win. And Kisye Jabin is doing his part. Yes, he is doing well. Let's also do our part, and then we will be making those gains. Adam mentioned something very instructive. He could want to do his work, yes, but then if he is not given the resources, and today I hear out of the 170 million or so, he was given just about 10,000 for the first, 10 million, sorry,
Yes.
for the first quarter to do his work. If he is stifled of resources, it might not be interference physically or people asking him to stop some cases, but when he is not given the necessary resources to do his work, it would also be one of the stumbling blocks in his way of achieving his mandate.
Now let's get to the resource question, because both of you have, talked about the resources. But even before we get to the resources, let's start from a very important issue, and let's start from the, board, for instance. So it's very obvious the board shall formulate policies necessary for the achievement of the object of the office and ensure the proper and effective performance of the function of the office, develop and monitor implementation of a code of conduct for the staff of the office, and facilitate cooperation between the office and relevant national investigative bodies. 9 months into office of Kisei Jabing, there is no board, Adam. And what does this say about our commitment? Does this show a nation that is committed to fighting corruption, or again, we're just pretending to be fighting corruption?
We are not serious. We absolutely are not serious. I can't understand what it takes just to get a board in place. And I have often wondered whether those at the presidency, especially those who inform the president, whether he's aware that things like this are falling through the cracks. Because if he is, then this will be a major disappointment. This is not the kind of thing that we are expecting 9 months after a board is not in place. What does it take to constitute a board? Probably these are all part of the reason why the constitutional amendments are so important, so that we reduce the work that the executive have to do and allow competence and meritocracy and allow other institutions to get some of these things done. So it's absolutely unacceptable that 9 months down the road, we don't have a board in place. If you had your own business and you were running it and you needed things to be executed, 9 months is 1 month, not 1 month, several months too many that you don't have the strategic organ of the business in place to ensure that you can deliver on your mandate. So this is absolutely unacceptable, and it's a good thing you are raising it. We want those in the executive, chief of staff and the rest, who should be ensuring that some of these things get out of the way. Don't make it much more easy for Ghanaians to complain and for all of us to feel more disillusioned and frustrated than we ought to be. Once in a while, a few things happen and they give you a smile as a Ghanaian, but some of these things just upset all of us. And I think it's just absolutely unacceptable that 9 months down the line, we still don't have a board in place.
Now, let me get to Mary. We've talked about the board for some time now. We saw what happened in the previous instance. After the swearing in of the special prosecutor, we had a board in place, and everything went on. Now the board is, done with its work, and as we speak, we still do not have a board in place. Now, what does this tell you about our commitment to this institution that we have set up to champion the fight against corruption?
Thank you, Winston. It tells. It is so glaring, it's apparent that we either have just decided to set this office up because it's a political commitment and it was put in the government's manifesto, and so it's being set up, but as to whether they are working is another challenge. And so I said I would do it. I have done it. That is what. So it is about ticking the box and not about being proactive. In the first instance, it took some time, but the board was constituted. But then again, it's interesting that since government took over in 2021, January, a special prosecutor was appointed the same year. He's been in office without a board. How do you expect such a person to work when the board is supposed to provide advice to him on strategic matters related to the work he is supposed to be doing. Again, the board is supposed to advise him on recruitment, and we know this has been an outstanding issue since the other prosecutor left. I have had occasion to be in the office of the special prosecutor on a number of occasions, and you do not see much activity going on there because I believe the recruitments have not been done. And then I begin to reflect, what at all is it about the board that is taking forever to constitute? Again, checking around, we know for a fact that the act, it mentions specific institutions and specific people according to a certain rank who are supposed to be part of the board. And these people have submitted their list to the office of the Attorney General, and I am sure that this list has been submitted to the President. So you begin to wonder, what is holding this list? It's not like the President has the laxity of picking just anybody from anywhere to constitute the board. It speaks to people from the audit service, from the SHRAG, from Yoko, FIC, and other places. And the person who is supposed to be on is supposed to be a director and above. So people have selected the persons who are supposed to be on this board. The list has been given. So what I thought, the only person and civil society also has a rep who is supposed to be a female. And civil society has also done some consultations and submitted their preferred candidate. So what at all is holding government or the president from swearing these people into office to ensure that they do their work? That is mind-boggling. You do not understand what is happening. And maybe, as Adam indicated, perhaps the people around the president are not giving him information. He needs to know that this list has been in his office forever and he has not constituted the board. And I am very sure that the Attorney General, who is supposed to ensure this process goes on, and the SP have also spoken to this issue. So what is the problem that the president is not dealing with? Then it gives the impression that, okay, the president is just speaking to the issue of fighting corruption. When he mentions to the special prosecutor that he is going to support him to execute his mandate, he was only just speaking to that and not putting it into practice, because he needs the board to work, and the board is not in place as we speak.
You're suggesting that the non-constitution of the board gives the impression that the president doesn't really care much about the fight against corruption?
What else do we say? Unless, of course, the president does not know. But if he knows that he is supposed to constitute the board, and he knows there is an outstanding matter of the special prosecutor putting in place or setting up his office by getting staffing, and these staff are specialized people he needs to work with, why is it that we do not constitute the board, so that when the special prosecutor doesn't do his part, then we will have cause to then question him? But as things stand now, it's like the president is not too interested in constituting the board, who would then, as you have spelled out clearly, dispense of their mandate, advising him, helping him with getting his recruitments finalized, so that he can then propel the agenda of fighting corruption. We are not talking about when the president says it is the government who has given more money than any other government. We may agree, yes, but then in this instance where a special purpose vehicle has been set up to ensure that we navigate the nuances and the challenges of the Attorney General prosecuting his own, now we are having issues with the constitution of a board. And the constitution of a board is very clearly spelled out. So what is holding back the president from swearing in this board? Unless, of course, he's not interested.
And talking about not being interested, I mean, I'll get back to that shortly, but you talked about the fact that you went to the office of the special prosecutor and there wasn't much activity going on there. What sort of activity were you expecting to see? And when you say there wasn't much activity going there, what really did you see?
Oh, the office he has a beautiful office now, let me say. A whole building, very nicely painted with everything set up. But then you realize that he is on the 9th floor or so, with the other offices not well established. And so we have empty offices. There is not much. They have staff. He is there. The deputy is there. He has other staff who we have engaged personally because we are doing some work with them together with CDD. But then you realize that he does not have the full complements of logistics to do his work. When you enter, even at the reception, it is not set up fully. His offices are empty. Perhaps maybe you would need money to buy and set up. But then if he has staff, then he would buy all those things to ensure that he has his office fully set up. So you would realize that maybe, for instance, if you go to Shraj, you enter any office, there are people in there doing their work. But in this instance, even though he has a bigger office, a very nice building, there is no full complements of staffing to ensure that that is done. And Winston, you are aware that even for the very few people who are there, most of them are on secondment. And it comes with the challenges of either the institutions which have seconded them will take them back or not. And so that is what I'm talking about, that you don't see a lot of activity. The special prosecutor is there working. He has a few other people with him. But on a 9th floor building, we expect to see a lot more happening.
We'll come back after these few messages. And when we return after these messages, I'll find out from Adam Sanan what he makes of a lack of resources to the special prosecutor. Yes, we've talked about the board, but there's also the question of resources to the special prosecutor. And you, Mary, make the point that it's not just about saying we've released money, but we should also assist the person in constituting or building other structures that would help the office to become very functional. This is Upfront on the Joy News channel. This evening, our focus is on the Office of the Special Prosecutor. We've discussed, the freezing of the assets of Sir John, and we've asked the relevance of this in the fight against corruption. My guests believe that this is indeed a good step in the fight against corruption. We're not focusing on the resources available to the Special Prosecutor. When we return after these few messages, we'll continue with the conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Right, so welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us here on Upfront on the Joy News channel. And tonight our focus is on the Office of the Special Prosecutor. So we've been talking about, the freezing of Sir John's assets, and we're not focusing on the resources available to him. Let me get to you, Adam Sanan, who is the co-chair of the Citizen Movement Against Corruption, and we're also joined by Mary Ada, who is Programs Manager of the Ghana Integrity Initiative. So Mary makes the point that her visit to the Office of the Special Prosecutor indicates that not much activity is going on there. She sees empty offices, a 9th floor office, which you would expect, 9-story building, and you'd expect that, people will be there working. She's talked about the human resources who are not available. But we also do know that when it comes to the staffing, the board has a major role to play in all of this. Let's look at these and find out how this could affect or impact the work of the Special Prosecutor, Adam.
Well, greatly so. Let me also say I have been to the office, beautiful place, and yes, you recognize that the bulk of the spaces is empty. I think it's also relevant to underscore when Mary says that there is the swearing in. What it means is that it's not so much the membership that is in question. It means that the various organizations who are to nominate persons who should occupy the board, that part of the work has been done. Therefore, the remaining part of it is that the presidency takes note of the list, and that's a swearing in if you want to add 1 or 2 people. Unless, of course, the 9-month, probably less, slightly less gap or lacuna is because looking at the names on that list, somebody is not happy with someone. Truth be told, without a board, many key aspects of what the SPO should be doing cannot happen because you need a board to approve when you are engaging new staff. You need a board to approve when you are going to send out certain kinds of budgets, you're going to take certain strategic decisions. The approval of annual work plans and medium to long-term plans, it's all done at the board level. And then based on that type of plan, you now have resources that you can expend. So it clearly would mean that without board approval of the annual work plan, of the budgets, the capacity to expend on those budget lines will not happen. You will just not be able to submit it for the authorizing entities, those who will be releasing funding, to see your board approval, release the funds, give you approval, and then you proceed. It greatly affects the capacity of the special prosecutor and that office to prosecute its agenda. So this is not something to be toyed with at all. And it's not for nothing that Mary and I are all saying that this is just absolutely unacceptable. Indirectly, it means you don't want the office to work. And that's the summary of the matter. That's the bottom line.
So we're joking then, aren't we? We're pretending. We're pretending to be fighting corruption.
We are. It's the surest way of crippling an office that has a mandate. Because if the board is not there to first receive proposals on what the plan is, and then also receive the budget, go through it, approve it, and then it becomes the basis of which you can now engage other parties to receive your funding, begin the process of, as it were, interviews and getting new staff, getting equipment. None of that can happen without board approval of the medium to long-term plans. It's just not going to happen. That's part of our policy process. So when you say a board is not in place, it's not something to be toyed with. It just means that the office is not being given the room to work, period.
And we saw in the case of the new jabbing MC nominee who was rejected by the delegates that it took the police to actually effect the arrest because yes, while the special prosecutor can engage in this kind of collaboration, we're told the police had to do the arrest for him also because he didn't have persons who could effect that. So he says, okay, let me let the police do this. I actually had to invite the person into Accra. Let's look at the fact.
Come again, Winston. I was just going to say, you see, even in terms of the very unique types of equipment, tools, etc., in other jurisdictions where you have special prosecutor, independent prosecutor, the kind of vehicles, armored cars, the kind of sophisticated surveillance equipment, the kind of trying to engage, undercover agents, it's a very, very complicated and vast type of work. It's not something that is just, we go, we get some information, we sit down. You need to be well resourced to do things like that. Because sometimes you are going after people who are dealing with huge volumes of cocaine, the kind of money at their disposal, and you are trying to get information to make sure that this thing stops. One needs to have all the support. And without a board in place to get the basic equipment, get the basic personnel, we are joking.
We're joking. Thank you very much, Edem Sananu, for joining us. Edem Sananu, who's co-chair of Citizen Movement Against Corruption. Finally, to you, Mary Ada, who's programs manager of the Ghana Integrity Initiative. Edem says, we're joking. Do you believe we're joking too? Or maybe you think, at least, we've shown some seriousness?
It's difficult to give an assessment, but the fact is that if you look at the realities with which we are operationalizing the office of the special prosecutor, it's not far-fetched to say we have been joking. We have been joking since 2017 or thereabout. In this case, this gentleman is showing a little commitment, or he's showing the enthusiasm to do the work. We should be seen to be manifestly dispensing of our various mandates, and in this case, the executive, who have received the list of board members. I do not want to belabor Edem's point, who have received the list of board members to be sworn in. If they want changes made, they should get that done. Nobody is querying them for that, but they should get what is supposed to be done so that the fight against corruption can go on. But as things stand, the gentleman asked for a certain budget. It was cut down astronomically, very down to ridiculous rates. Now we hear that even we are in June, today is 2nd June, and he hasn't gotten much, less than 10 million of the amount he requested for. He hasn't gotten that yet. How do you expect him to work? He needs to recruit people. He needs the board to sanction these. How do you expect him to do that? He needs specialized vehicles like Edem spoke to. If we need to fight corruption, and we mean to fight corruption, then the president, as he has said in the past and continues to speak about, should let us see that he is doing so. Unless, of course, somebody is keeping information and is not allowing that to reach the president, which I seriously doubt. Okay. I hope that more action will be taken, and so that some of us will say we are not joking with this special purpose vehicle we have created to navigate the various challenges of our constitution to fight corruption.
Thank you very much, Mary Ada, who's Programs Manager of the Ghana Integrity Initiative, for joining us here on Upfront on the Joy News channel. My name is Winston. I'm on behalf of the team. Thank you very much for joining us. Up next is Joy News Prime. Keep watching the Joy News channel and have a good evening.